Our topic for today is defense mechanisms. So what is defense mechanisms? Defense mechanisms are unconscious mental techniques used by the ego to keep conflicts out of consciousness, thus decreasing anxiety and maintaining the individual's sense of safety, equilibrium, and self-esteem. All defenses are unconscious. Defense change over time. Defenses are adaptive as well as pathologic. Psychopathology issue of intensity and extent. We have 4 kinds of defense mechanisms, which is narcissistic, immature, anxiety, and lastly mature. So the first one is narcissistic. The defense mechanisms of narcissistic is denial, projection and splitting. So we have an example of denial, which is the I'm just selective about the reality I choose to accept. So it means, the denial is the refusal to accept reality or fact, acting as if a painful event, thought or feeling did not exist. Second types of narcissistic, which is projection. So projection is when person attributes his or her own wishes, desires, thoughts, or emotions to someone else. Internal states are perceived as a part of someone else or of the world in general. And the third types of narcissistic, which is splitting. It means is all or nothing thinking. It can be the splitting of mind and mental state. In this case, patient thinks in black or white forms. It's either positive or negative, good or bad. It can even be splitting of the ego when the patient is existentially insecure. The second kinds of defense mechanisms, which is immature defense. The immature defense have 4 types of defense mechanism. First is blocking, second is regression, third is somatization, and lastly identification. So now, let's see what is blocking. The blocking is temporary or transient block in thinking, or an inability to remember. We have 2 examples of blocking, which is the during exam, and after exam. So what's inside in during exam? OMG. I can't remember question 7's answer. Second example of after exam, which I just remembered the answer to question 7. So this is the 2 example of blocking. Now we go in second types of immature defense, which the regression. So what do you know in regression? The regression involves taking the position of a child in some problematic situation, rather than acting in a more adult way. Can be a simple and harmless, like a person sucking a pen, or maybe more dysfunctional as crying or using moody arguments. So next is the third types of immature defense, which is the somatization. It is when psychic derivatives are converted into bodily symptoms. Feelings are manifest as physical symptoms rather than psychological distress. Lets us know the last part of immature defense, which is the identification. That can conclude unconsciously patterning one's behavior after of someone who is more powerful. Now let's go in third kinds of defense mechanism, which is the anxiety defense. We have 9 types of anxiety defense mechanism, which is the displacement, repression, isolation of affect, acting out, rationalization, reaction formation, undoing passive-aggressive, and lastly is dissociation. So the first types of anxiety, which is the displacement. It is redirecting of thoughts, feelings and impulses directed at one person or object, but taken out upon another person or object. The second types of anxiety defense, which is the repression. Repression is the unconscious blocking of unacceptable thoughts, feelings and impulses. We have 1 example of repression. I want you to help me recover my repressed memories. I keep forgetting the multiplication table. Then the third types of anxiety, which is the isolation of affect. It is painful, troublesome, frightening feelings are removed from thoughts, forced from conscious awareness, split between thoughts and feelings. We have an example of isolation, which is the 7 affective thoughts. First is the lost, second confused, third is unsure, fourth is unclear, fifth is perplexed, sixth is disoriented, and lastly, the bewildered. Now let's us see the fourth types of anxiety defense mechanism, which is the acting out is performing an extreme behavior in order to express thoughts or feelings the person feels incapable of otherwise expressing. We have an example or symptoms of acting out. It is the damaging or vandalizing property, harming or threatening other people or pets, self-harm, lying, stealing, truancy or poor academic performance, smoking, drinking alcohol, or drug abuse, and lastly early sexual activity. Next is the fifth types of anxiety, which is the rationalization. It is putting something into a different light or offering a different explanation for one's perceptions or behaviors in the face of a changing reality. For example, a person who is turned down for a date might rationalize the situation by saying they were not attracted to the other person anyway. A student might blame a poor exam score on the instructor rather than their own lack of preparation. The sixth types of anxiety defense mechanism, which is the reaction formation. It is the converting of unwanted or dangerous thoughts, feelings or impulses into their opposites. An example of reaction formation would be treating someone you strongly dislike in an excessively friendly manner in order to hide your true feelings. Then the seventh types of anxiety, which is the undoing. Attempt to take back an unconscious behavior or thought that is unacceptable or hurtful. An example is, by undoing the previous action, the person is attempting to counteract the damage done by the original comment, hoping the two will balance one another out. For example, is this flower big enough to get me out of trouble? Then the eighth types of anxiety, which is the passive-aggressive. Nonverbal aggression that manifests in negative behavior. It is when you are angry with someone but do not/cannot tell them. It can either be covert, concealed and hidden, or overt, blatant and obvious. For an example of passive-aggressive street signs. First, it is fine, don't stop, whatever. Second, no one's going to make you yield, it's your life. And lastly the third, most people think there's no turn on red, but maybe you're just different. Then next, is the lastly anxiety defense mechanisms, which is the ninth types of dissociation. Separates self from one's experience. Third person rather than first person experience. Facts of an event are acceptable, but the person is protected from the full impact of the experience. An example of mild, common dissociation include daydreaming, highway hypnosis or getting lost, in a book or movie, all of which involve losing touch with awareness of one's immediate surroundings. Now let's us see the last kinds of defense mechanisms, which is the mature defense. So the mature defense have three types of defense mechanisms, which is the humor, sublimation, and lastly suppression. So the first types of mature defense, which is the humor. Expression of feeling without causing discomfort. For an example, it's okay if I lost a leg, at least I can dress up like a pirate now, ha ha ha. Then the second types of mature defense mechanisms, which is the sublimation. The channeling of unacceptable impulses, thoughts and emotions into more acceptable ones. An example of sublimation. It is the vaporization of frozen carbon dioxide, dry ice, at ordinary atmospheric pressure and temperature. The phenomenon is the result of vapor pressure and temperature relationships. Then the last types of mature defense mechanisms, which is the suppression. Conscious decision to postpone attention to an impulse or conflict. Conscious setup and unconscious follow-through. The suppressed content temporarily resides in the unconscious. For an example of suppression, is a government stopping citizens from participating in a certain activity. Do you have any questions about the defense mechanisms? Just comment down below.